The world's a scary place and increasingly facing risks from all fronts, but just how are South African businesses coping? I suppose it depends on which ones you choose. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight, I'm joined by Isak Pretorius. He's Chairman and Chief Executive of Afriscope, and Clive Zulberg, the Founder and Chief Executive of Stallion Holdings. They're both YPO members, and they want to talk about the world of risk and how we fit into it. Because what you guys do, Isak, is you go across the African continent, you find opportunities, you help marry people with opportunities, and once they're married, you give them counselling and guidance. You're just like an old-fashioned priest, really.
Yeah, kind of. We're the priests of business in Africa.
Give me some examples, please, because just this week, Marriott, for example, has announced they're going to be building the Marriott flagship hotel in South Africa. 2 years ago, they bought Protea. They've earned their stripes. Now they're bringing the brand in as well.
Yeah, and I think they've been very smart about how they're doing it. And that's exactly what we try and help businesses globally to do, is to say you don't know Africa, you don't understand the environments and the markets that you're going to be working in. They're scary for a reason, because you don't understand them. They're not scary once you understand them and you know them and you're operating there. And so we work with businesses like Marriott on certain projects in Africa, but we generally will take companies and we literally will hold their hand as they go through that process. Because I'll use an example. One of the things we focus on is how to really market product and take products to consumers on the African market. And people sort of say, well, you know, it's so difficult to reach this emerging middle. Everyone's so excited about it, but how do we actually reach it? And we use innovative, creative, entrepreneurial ways that people don't necessarily think of in developed markets. Like Unilever, for instance, coming to us and saying, you know, we've really got a problem taking a certain product to this market, because what had happened was
5 kilogram boxes of automated dishwasher powder, and we don't know why nobody's buying it.
Exactly. No, this was actually iodized salt. So people in this market were used to buying salt in little plastic bags at a market. It's brown salt, it's unwashed, it's unrefined. So you buy a big bag of brown salt like this for $1, let's say. Okay. Now suddenly Unilever is doing a great project. They're taking iodized salt, okay, which is really helping these communities. But it's in a tiny little packet like this. It's all white, okay, and it costs the same price as a big bag of brown salt. So market wasn't really buying into this. So to solve this challenge, what we did was we said, well, hang on. The NGOs in these markets are actually the people who have the best connections to the communities. And so we started working with community liaison officers that work within the NGOs who are in those markets, trusted by those communities because they're bringing aid and development to them all the time, to actually start to disseminate the messaging and help with the marketing of this product, because it was having both a social and, of course, a business impact. So taking an entrepreneurial but also very unique view to how to actually take a product to market.
The thing that strikes me, Clive, about anybody who does business on this continent of ours, outside of South Africa, because in South Africa I think we're manically depressed and we have issues and the lights flicker for a moment and we think load shedding's arrived and it's the end of the world. People like Isak and others that we might know are eternal optimists about the opportunity that the continent presents. What are you finding?
Bruce, very much. Thank you, and I'd agree with you totally. Isak's enthusiasm is actually infectious.
It's annoying.
I'd be very careful to let him in front of your board, because he's going to convince them Africa is the place to be. And Africa is the place to be. It's a very exciting market with the limitations of growth that we are facing in South Africa. It's a natural expansion for South African business. But it is markets we don't know and understand, and the danger of thinking of it, of going from South Africa into what we call Africa, like we're not in Africa, is that it's one market, and it's really not. Each country, you need to really understand the intricacies of working in that country. You need to take your money in the correct way, so that you can get it out in the correct way when it's time to come out. And it's about relationships, and it's about knowing who you can trust and who you can talk to. And it's very, very helpful having somebody like Isak on board who's able to guide us as well.
Give me a sense of the Stallion story on this continent, because people are very familiar with the brand here, but not so much elsewhere.
Well, margins in South Africa are under a lot of pressure at the moment, and it's mostly because of compliance. There's a lot of non-compliance and low barriers to entry, and because of that, your margins are constantly under pressure. As you get up into Africa, into the various countries in Africa, they have margin for trade, which has been our attraction. And initially we thought, well, we're going to just do this thing, Africa, here we come. And off we went. And we quickly realized we were the last guys to arrive in Africa. The Americans were there, the Canadians were there, the Israelis were there, the Australians, and we were just arriving. And we quickly had to figure out how to make space for ourselves. And it became about relationships. So we couldn't charge in with the business. It was arrive there. The one thing that you don't do in Africa is arrive for a meeting and leave that evening. We quickly learned that protocol dictates you're there for 3 days or 4 days, even for one meeting, and you're going to do lunches and dinners, and and that's the African way. And you need to be very conscious of it, and you need to be conscious that you don't take your South African mentality out to
What is the
Africa.
South African mentality? Because one hears the stories about South Africans arriving going, how's it, Alex? Yeah. And people go, yep, you are, and we're busy, sorry, and block you out.
Yeah. Well, I think the South African mentality is a little bit of that. Hey, but I'm here, I'm South African, and I'm going to teach you how to do business.
And this rugby Saturday, I've got to be back.
No, but it's a reality. I often say to South African clients, this roll in, roll out, I call them the roll in, roll out. You see them, they will never check a bag. They've always got a roll on because they're never going for more than 2 days. And it's this, but I think that's less of the challenge even than the understanding that South African business hasn't yet discovered what it doesn't know about the rest of the continent. Okay, so we charge into these markets. We say we are just the most developed version of Africa. So we're going to come and show you how it's done. The reality is, my friends who run businesses in markets like Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria, they could actually teach a lot of South African businesses a lot about doing business in those markets and how to creatively adjust in those markets, etc. So I say to South Africans, look, you often will be far more successful at opening a subsidiary in Germany or Australia than opening one in Congo or Ghana. Okay, because the reality is that we live in more of a first world market here. If your business in South Africa is catering more to the formal market, you actually know very little about operating in many of the other African markets. And so there's not just a perceived arrogance. We as South Africans actually have to start to admit that there is an arrogance about our business model and how we want to do it in the rest of the continent. Those South African businesses that are really succeeding have not taken that approach. They've gone in, they've worked with local partners, they've taken the time to understand the culture, they've admitted what they don't know, and they've spent the time on the ground to actually integrate themselves and, as Clive says, to develop relationships. I think it's one of the things that's such a benefit for us of being YPO members. You know, we've got over 600 members of YPO, CEOs all over the continent that we can connect with. These are people that we can trust, who are running established, successful businesses that are able to help us from day one when we enter into those markets. And that's why I say to people, I'm not somebody who joins membership organizations. I don't do it. I like to build my own network. But I must say, I say to people again and again, YPO has been the best investment I probably ever made from a networking and understanding perspective.
You can sell ice to Inuits, this man.
On commission.
I suspect he does.
Say it's a volunteer organisation, so I didn't get paid for that pitch.
But that's the issue with so many South African businesses. They've thought that Australia was ripe pickings because half of their friends lived there. They went in. Pick and Pay burned its fingers not once but twice there. Lots of companies have lost a lot of money going into Australia. A lot of companies are paying big school fees on this continent as well. But the opportunities are legion. Absolutely. We also think that it's virgin territory. And as you made the point earlier, Clive, the rest of the world was wide awake to these opportunities long before we got there.
Yeah, very much so. And, one of the things that's worked well for us in our diversification, again, I go back to relationships, and it's something we got to remain consciously conscious of, because in South Africa we have relationships. You've got your banking relationships, your insurance relationships.
Stuff you take for granted, frankly.
Oh, absolutely. Because you fly in there, you've got funding from South Africa that you're going to use there. You don't think it's necessary to go and meet the bank manager and shake his hand and have a cup of tea. And those are the biggest mistakes that we made initially, and that we've learned our lessons through. Meet your bank manager, have a cup of coffee with him. Tell him who your local partners are. He's going to give you an indication very quickly whether you're on the right track. I think one of the biggest things as South Africans, we sit here, we have guys flying in from Africa, coming in, talking to us, telling us how great things are. They're going to be your local partner, and they're going to bring work and funding, and jump on a plane, you go back there with them, you get all excited, and next thing you're 2 years down the line and lots of money down the line, and everybody's telling you, no, you got into bed with dogs. because you just didn't do the basic research. The South African ambassador in each country, you've got to see him. Or her. You've got to go and meet them, shake their hand, tell them that you're in country. Basic, fundamental things that we did wrong on our initial entrance into Africa.
Yeah, and it comes to that level of, call it self-confidence, call it arrogance, whatever you like, Isak, that we've got incredibly important lessons to learn. Is this still the continent of great opportunity that it was at the turn of the century? In the year 2000, it was the continent of opportunity. Then we seem to flag a bit. Growth rates are slowing in some parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Economies aren't doing well. Commodity prices are taking strain. Things feel tougher now than perhaps they did 2 or 3 years ago.
I think they are, but I think if we look globally, things are tougher globally too. So, the world is facing a lot more challenges than, were there just 6 months ago. You talk to European economists and suddenly everything's changing with refugee crises, etc. My feeling is an absolute resounding yes, okay? I personally believe that Africa has to, not will or should, but has to go through an industrial revolution, okay? And I believe our children will actually judge us by saying, Dad, you lived during the time of the industrial revolution of Africa. Where's our piece of it?
Yeah.
Where were you? Because the Rockefellers of America, we have that opportunity on this continent. And we're seeing it happen, and as Clive says, many times we're actually pitching up in these markets and realizing that there's others that are there. I think the thing we've got to realize, though, is that the days of the 1,000% return in Africa are gone, okay? They're not there, but the days of the 1,000 times risk are also gone. A lot of our markets are a lot more stable, okay, they're a lot more predictable, infrastructure is improving. It's still not a walk in the park out there, it's not for the faint-hearted, okay, but the reality is that if we do business and we do it properly and we're prepared to pay the school fees of learning how to navigate doing business in the different environments properly, I still believe that Africa truly, truly is a land of opportunity and the last frontier economically, which we either have to embrace and take a hold of and benefit from, or risk having our children ask us why we didn't.
Clive, as well, last question to you, and see if you agree with me. If this doesn't work out for him, he can go into the ministry, right? Isak Pretorius, Chairman and Chief Executive of Afriscope, and Clive Zulberg, the Founder and Chief Executive of Stallion Holdings. Fascinating insights into doing business across the magnificent continent of Africa. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow night, bye-bye.